So I did something dumb so that you don't have to. That's kind of my job here is I'm like, you know, the first screw up, like, you know, the kid you drop. You know, I'm the burnt pancake so that then I can sit here and I can tell you how to not waste your time and money like I did. You're welcome, internet. Today we're talking about custom liquid cooling loops. And if you watched my video last week, you got to see, well, I guess you got to see this guy right here. This is Orthrus. He is my dual system custom liquid cooled PC. Well, two PCs, I guess. Two PCs, both in that case, one for gaming, one for streaming, both of them liquid cooled by the same loop. And yeah, I'll link to that video down below or like in the little thing up in the corner there if I remember. One of the two places. But here was the mistake. I did it entirely alone with absolutely zero experience with liquid cooling. Okay, I guess like I've installed an AIO cooler before, but that's not the same thing. Fortunately, this was a project with EK Waterblocks, so they did make sure I had all the right pieces, and that was incredibly helpful. But the actual piecing them together, that was all by myself. Which brings us here. 5 things I really wish I had known before I started. Before we get started, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Owned.tv. Owned is your one-stop shop for all your stream aesthetic needs, whether it's overlays or alerts or animations or profile pictures or panels, whatever you need. They've got a whole list of designs for you. And my favorite part about them is that they are modular. So for example, if you and all your friends pick up this Rodin design that's been kind of a long-running favorite of mine, you can all pick and choose different pieces of the overlay, and none of you are gonna have the exact same one. So if you'd like to make the smart move like many from the community have done, I will leave a link in the description below that will take you to their site to pick one up. Also, that link supports the channel, by the way. And if you'd like to receive 40% off as well, use code ALPHA at checkout. Cool. I also stream every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. So if you'd like to see Orthrus in action, I will leave a link to that in the description down below as well. Cool. 5 things that would have made my life astronomically easier had I known them before I started liquid cooling. Let's start with number 1. And this is the most important thing you should know going into this. It will take you longer than you expect. And to expand on this, it will take you even longer than that if you don't pay attention to some of the next 4 things. I pulled apart my PC. This is my daily driver. This is my streaming PC. It's how I do my job. And I ripped it apart. I thought I could get it done in a day. I planned on hunkering down first thing in the morning, grinding throughout the day, and that by the time I was ready to go to bed, I would have a liquid cooled PC. That's not how it went. That's not how it'll go for you if you're about to do your first one. This ended up taking me 2 weeks. I ended up having to like rig up a small PC within the PC using another GPU that I hadn't ripped apart yet. And I couldn't game and stream on it at the same time. It wasn't powerful enough. I had a severely handicapped stream for at least 2 weeks while I was rebuilding this thing. So if it's your main rig, please have a backup. Just have a backup. It's a good idea in general. I have a backup now. Should have had it before, but I have it now. This is bringing me back. I'm getting like, my heart rate is picking up again thinking about this whole thing. Let's move on to number 2. Tip number 2. Don't use one of these. Even one of these that comes with your liquid cooling set. You wanna know why? You won't be able to cut straight. No matter how hard you try, the cut will not be straight. Take a look. Look at this. Let me zoom in here. Just so you can see what's going on. Take a look at this cut. Look how crooked that is. Look how nasty. Look how nasty that cut is. That's the best. That is the best you're gonna get. Now, on the flip side, look how nice. Look, the edges are rounded. Wanna know what I did this with? You cut something like this with a rotary blade. Pick yourself up a rotary blade. Is that what it's called? A rotary cutter? You wanna know what you do with this? Here, you stick it on the pipe, spin it all the way around, tighten it. Spin it all the way around, tighten it. Spin it all the way around. And then, once you tighten it enough times, oh, it comes right off. Look how clean. You can't see it. It doesn't matter. It's clean. It's straight. It's clean. The edges are rounded so it's not gonna cut your O-ring when you try to put it in the fitting. I started mine and I cut a couple with the saw and I was like, I need to get one of these. And then I had to order it and I had to wait another 3-4 days for it to come in. Just get one of these. Seriously, I think it was like 20 bucks. And if you're already paying for the whole liquid cooling loop, 20 bucks is nothing. Speaking of fittings, another thing that made me waste a whole lot of time, plan your loop before you pick out all your fittings. EK Waterblock sent me a whole batch of regular fittings, and then I asked them for 4 90-degree fittings. I thought that would be plenty. Yeah, no, I think I ended up using 7. And I think I was also missing 2 regular fittings. And again, had to order them, wait for them to come in. I know it's overwhelming at first, but I absolutely recommend that you draw out on a piece of paper your entire layout. You draw the tubes and figure out exactly how your tubes are gonna go so you know exactly what fittings you need. Please save yourself some time, save yourself some money, and do that. Oh, and speaking of like planning for your fittings, by the way, we'll call this one like a 3.5. If you're ever planning it out and you're like, ooh, that's a really tight bend, don't expect it to work. I had a couple bends that I thought I'd be able to do, and it turns out they were impossible to do without 90-degree fittings, which is why I needed to buy more. Sometimes it's just not possible to get a bend tight enough. You need a 90-degree fitting. Number 4, this is actually a positive note. We need one of those. I'm actually really proud of how this part turned out. You can eyeball your bends and still make it look precise, as long as you have enough extra tubing to try again if you screw up, and you have a lot of patience. There are tools like this that when you heat up the tubes, you can lay them in here to make them perfect. I found the 90-degree wasn't always a perfect 90-degree angle. I found I actually got a better 90-degree just by eyeballing it. However, the 45-degree was a huge help. It's a lot easier to eyeball 90 degrees than 45 degrees. So I used the 45 fitting for this, but there were, I think, 2 times in this build where I spent 30 to 40 minutes on this long tube with like 3 or 4 bends, and it ended up being off by like 3 millimeters. And it wasn't a situation where I could just rebend it. Maybe I'd cut it too short or whatever the problem was. I was bending it on stream, and that was a moment that I really didn't want to start over. And I asked my chat, what do we do? Do we start over? Do we make these 2 tubes not quite parallel? And they said, start over. And you know what? It was the right call. With how great it looks now, I'm happy I did, but it did take another 45 minutes just to do it again. Probably shorter, because if you screw up, you can use the old one as a reference for the new one and then just make the slight adjustments you need. So it's not that bad. But yeah, if someone tries to scare you into thinking that you can't do this without a whole measuring system and measuring by the millimeter, yeah, I did my entire build by eyeballing it. And I'm really proud of how it turned out. But yeah, 90 degrees are a lot easier to eyeball than 45s. Number 5, this one could have ended up really poorly if I hadn't noticed something wrong. It probably would have fried my GPU. Use the thermal putty pads that come with your water block, not the ones that come with your GPU. When I first pulled apart my Founders Edition 2080 Ti, which broke my heart. I know the cooling's not great in them, but I love the design, and it hurt me to wreck that thing. But it was actually the first time I'd seen the inside of a GPU, and not only was there, of course, thermal paste on the actual chip itself, but on all the VRMs and all the other pieces, there were pads of thermal putty. Now, my water block came with thermal pads, but I thought, oh, why not use the ones designed for this GPU? It makes the most sense. And I replaced the thermal paste on the chip in the middle, then tried putting on the new water block, and I noticed after I tightened it down that if I held it up and looked through it, I could actually see between the water block and the GPU. The stock thermal pads were too thick for this water block. This water block was designed for thinner pads. And so those thick pads were pushing it off. I opened it back up, and the X that I'd made with thermal paste hadn't even been touched. That GPU would have overheated so fast. So I took a second look at the thermal putty that came with EK water blocks, noticed it was like half the thickness, maybe even less. Replaced it all, put it all back together, and luckily that time it went very much flush. This was actually confirmed later during my stream where I finished all the bends, that same stream where I had to stop and redo a bend. Yeah, that was a heck of a stream. But Jay's 2 cents, the king of water cooling on YouTube, actually came in, and I mentioned that to it, and he said, oh yeah, always use the thermal putty that comes with the water blocks. And the part that scared me the most about it, like this whole situation, is that I couldn't do anything to validate that the new thermal pads allowed the heatsink to get closer. I was just kind of hoping, I put the whole thing together, fired it up, and hoped that the temperatures didn't get out of control, because what do? What if I built the whole thing and then the water block still wasn't pressing up against the thermal paste? What do you even do? You drain the whole thing, pull it all apart? Man, I just learned that the only thing scarier than actually bending the tubes that liquid is going to flow through over your computer is hoping that you got your GPU water block on correctly. That was stressful from step one until I tested the whole thing. But yeah, that's it. Five and a half things that I never found on the internet before I started. And I scoured YouTube for first time water cooling, what you need to know. I watched literally Jay's 2 cents entire library of liquid cooling PC stuff. And don't get me wrong, I got a lot of good advice, but from beginner to beginner, I hope this helps. And by the way, if you have any questions that maybe I missed in this video, feel free to jump into my Twitch chat. Again, I stream Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, noon Pacific time, link down below, or talk to a whole community. We've got 50,000 people in our Discord, plenty of which I'm sure have done custom liquid cooling loops. So feel free to jump into there, link to that in the description down below. And as always, happy streaming. Oh wait, one more thing. I just wanna make sure after this whole aneurysm I almost had on camera just now, I can't wait to do my second one. I swear, as stressful as it was, I loved it. You'll love it. Good luck. I believe in you. Bye.